Hey, what's up? I'm Travis the Lone Wolf Walsh, co-founder of the Canadian Disability Darts Association and multiple-time team dart tournament winner. So I'm going to give you my predictions of the PDC World Cup of Darts 2021 in the first round. This is my favorite tournament of the year, even more so than the World Championships, because this is the one where anybody can come out of nowhere and make an upset. 2021 and 2020 have been two very turmoil type of years, especially when it comes to the coronavirus pandemic. There's going to be a lot of changes and a lot of different things that are going to be different. So I'm going to give you my predictions. So this is what we're going to do. Let's sit back, order some takeout, light up a cigar, get some good booze, and let's have a game of darts. First round is going to be England versus Brazil. England's going to be represented for the first time since 2010 by James Wade. He's made his way back up after so many years of being on the lowdown. His partner is going to be Dave Chisnell. Normally, I would say England would always have the advantage going in to possibly win the World Cup, but that was one of the days when Phil Taylor and Adrian Lewis were running the show. Nowadays, Adrian Lewis has gone down the ladder, and Phil Taylor, he's happily retired, going to be playing in the Seniors Championship. However, England's still a very, very dangerous team. If it's not soccer, then it's definitely going to be darts that they're going to be the superpower in. James, he's doing really good for himself these days. Dave Chisnell, he's going to be doing pretty good too. There's only been a couple of other times when England's been represented by somebody else, and that's mostly either been with Rob Cross and Michael Smith. But now they're going up against Brazil. One of my old friends, Diogo Portela, against Artur Valley. Diogo's a solid player, don't get me wrong, but he hasn't really made much of a splash. He did manage to get to the first round last year in the PDC World Championships against Steve Beaton. However, I think that England's going to be just too strong a team to take on against Brazil. Diogo, I love you, brother, but him and Artur, I don't think they're going to make it past England. It's going to take a really big miracle for them to get past England. But hey, Spain did it back in 2010, so anything's possible. But the way James and Dave are playing these days, I think it's going to be a little bit very, very difficult for them to do. Next round is going to be South Africa versus Spain. Devin Peterson and Carl Gabriel taking on Jesus Nogueira and Jose Jostica. You know what? Normally, Spain is represented by Antonio Alcinas, but this is the first time since the PDC World Cup's been going on that Alcinas isn't going to be representing Spain. Instead, Jesus Nogueira and an unknown guy by the name of Jose Jostica. Jesus was in the PDC World Cup last year, and he showed himself to be a pretty solid player. But then again, he's going up against South Africa. Carl Gabriel is making his return to represent South Africa the second year in a row. I don't really like the thing that South Africa's got on to go. Here it is now, instead of having a tournament of merit, or instead of having a merit, they do a tournament every single year to see who would be Devin Peterson's partner. I'm not a big fan of that aspect. Anybody can come out of nowhere and be Devin Peterson's partner. It's one thing playing one-on-one for a spot in a South African team, but when you're constantly doing that every year, there's barely any chance of having a successful partner its second year in a row. A lot of these teams actually have the same two players for a lot of years, but then again, I guess that's just the way South Africa wants to run it. South Africa is led, of course, by Devin Peterson, who's been there in the PDC World Cup ever since South Africa first started going there. He's only missed maybe one or two times in the PDC World Cup. Last year, he didn't do too good. He took on Poland, which I thought for sure that South Africa was going to be beaten. Thought for sure South Africa was going to beat them, but Poland just seemed to be too strong a team. So South Africa, I think if Devin can play the way he does, especially when it comes to playing for South Africa, I think that him and Carl are going to have a good chance against Spain, especially against Jose Jostica, who's an unknown guy who's never been in this position before. Where it was Antonio Alcinas, I'd say Spain would probably have a bit of an advantage, especially the way Devin's playing these days, which ain't very good. But if Devin can do what he knows to do and Carl Gabriel does his part, I'm going to have to give my prediction. I think South Africa might take this just by a squeak. Third round. It's going to be Gabriel Clemens and Max Hopp representing Germany against my guys, the Canadian team of Jeff Smith and Matt Campbell. This is the second year that both Jeff and Matt are going to be representing Canada, and there's a pretty good chance that they do very, very well. considering the fact that they've already played together once a year before and they know each other fairly well. But going up against Gabriel Clemens and Max Hopp is going to be a big thing. They're going to be playing against two, probably the best combination that Germany's ever had in the PDC World Cup, even more so than Andre Velga and Gian Artut. But that being said, Max Hopp, when he's on that World Cup stage, sometimes he doesn't perform that well. I thoroughly thought last year that when Canada was taking on Northern Ireland, it was going to be pretty hard for them, considering Northern Ireland is a superpower in the game. But Canada, not only did they beat Northern Ireland, they beat Northern Ireland fairly bad, and then they went on and then they took out New Zealand. But going up against Germany, well, once again, it's probably the best team that they've got. If Canada can really do what they know to do, Jeff Smith is a very dangerous player. He's a very big scorer, and he knows how to take out the top, and he knows how to take out the high checkouts. Matt Campbell, he's really good too. I've seen him play multiple times on the CDC circuit, and this is the second time in a row that he's had to work his way onto Team Canada. So I'm going to go with Canada on this one, mostly because they're just my guys. Next up, we got Russia against Japan. Russia's going to be represented, of course, by Boris Koltsov, and his teammate, which was originally supposed to be Dmitry Gorbanov, had to pull out for unknown reasons. He had to withdraw because of quarantine regulations. Once again, the coronavirus is shaking up everything that we love hold dear. So his teammate is going to be Evgeny Zoltov. I'm not exactly sure who he is, and I haven't seen him play before. But if it's the same guy I think he is for the 2013 PDC World Cup, then it might be pretty interesting. But they're taking on Japan. Yun Matsuda and Yoshisha Baba. Two guys I never even heard before. Apparently they had to work their way up into a tournament to play on the PDC World Cup for Japan. Normally, Saigo Asada was supposed to be the team captain, but I guess he just fell down the ranks and he went back to playing soft dip. So, because these are two guys that I've never seen before, there's always a chance for an upset. Last year, Russia got hurt really bad, considering that they had to draw Wales in the first round, and Boris Koltsov wasn't in the game. He just lost his dad, and he just wasn't 100% there. I think after a year of finally getting his head back on straight, even though his partner got switched up at the last minute, I'm going to go with Russia on this one. In the fourth round, it's going to be Belgium against Croatia. This is the first time Croatia is going to be playing in the PDC World Cup since all the way back in 2013. Belgium is going to be represented, of course, by Kim Huybrechts and Dimitri van den Berg. Dimitri's been going through a rough time for the past little while. His knee surgery and everything else. But Kim Huybrechts, he's always been a mainstay for the Belgian team. He's always been the team captain. He's always been the leader. But Dimitri van den Berg and Kim Huybrechts, they're a very dangerous team. Going up against Croatia, they're going up against Boris Krekmar and Pearl Ludbik. Pronounced the name wrong, I truly apologize. But Boris is a big man. He's a big dart player. He's got all the experience in the world, mostly with soft tip. It's only recently in the past little while that he's been going back to steel tip. Boris also played in the PDC World Cup once before, all the way back in 2012. Croatia didn't do all too good. Going up against Belgium, I don't know who Boris's teammate is, but Boris is a very dangerous player. Not to mention intimidating. The man's a giant. But this is darts, not bodybuilding. And this is definitely not pro wrestling or MMA. So, too strong a team. I'm going to give this one to Belgium. Next up, we got Austria against the Philippines. Austria is going to be represented by none other than the gentle Mincer Silovic and Robijan Rodriguez. Probably the most dangerous team that Austria has ever put out. Doesn't matter who else has ever been on it. They're going up against the Philippines, led by Lawrence Alaga and Christian Perez. Both these guys have been on Team Philippines before. Lawrence is a very dangerous player. He doesn't just fly his darts, he chucks them in with a lot of force. Christian Perez, he's pretty dangerous too. But once again, this is a team that had to change up due to coronavirus. As for, I suppose you could say, as for Austria, Mincer Silovic and Robijan Rodriguez, these guys, well, these guys have been together too many times. They actually practiced together from the same hometown. Roby John actually got a start in Mr. Solovic's pub, The Gentle, in Austria. So this could be a pretty close game considering the way Mr. Solovic has been playing these days. And Roby John Rodriguez hasn't exactly been on the top of game. Not to mention the fact that two of his brothers now are trying to take a spot. And they all look alike, despite the fact that they're not even twins or triplets. So, given the history, I got to go with Austria on this one. Next round is going to be Northern Ireland. Daryl Gurney and Brendan Dolan against Hong Kong's Kei Fai Lung and Man Lok Ling. I'm really bad with these names. Northern Ireland is definitely a superpower. They're one of the top 8 seeded teams in this tournament. However, Daryl Gurney and Brendan Dolan have shown time and time again in the past World Cups they can't even make it out of the first round sometimes, especially last year when they lost so dominantly to Canada. When you think that Daryl Gurney and Brendan Dolan would actually be the dominant Northern Ireland team. But really, Northern Ireland hasn't really been a dominant power in this game since Brendan Dolan was captain and he was teaming with Mickey Mansell. I don't know what it is. Maybe they just don't click. Maybe they just not a powerful team enough. But once again, when you're playing for your country, anything can happen. You got that kind of stress on you. But I think against Hong Kong, Kei Fai Lung, he's been there before. He knows what he's doing. Dominant player. I don't know anything about his teammate. Hong Kong could, if they can get the click going right away, I think they're going to give Northern Ireland a hell of a time, considering the fact that Northern Ireland's track record in the past couple World Cups hasn't been that good. But at the same time, this is still Daryl Gurney and Brendan Dolan we're talking about. And they're on a run. They're on a really dangerous run after both of them have just played in the Hungarian Darts Trophy. So, once again, I got to give it to the Irish. And speaking of Ireland, we've got former PDC World Cup finalists, the Republic of Ireland, represented by William O'Connor and Steve Lennon, and they're taking on Portugal. Jose de Souza and Jose Marquez. I got to give this one to Northern Ireland strictly for the fact that William O'Connor and Steve Lennon are two dangerous players. They've been to the finals. They've come back time and time again to show what kind of players they are. But don't get me wrong, Jose de Souza, he's also a very dangerous player. Don't know much about his teammate. I think it's the same guy from last year. Jose has shown himself to be a very quality player, former PDC Grand Slam champion. They don't still give those away. But Republic of Ireland, they've shown that what they can do, and it is probably the most dominant team that they've had. Got to go with the Republic of Ireland on this one. Next up, you got the defending World Cup champions, Wales, going up against Finland. Finland, they haven't been showing up exactly the top team in the past World Cups. They made it to the semifinals one year, but that was a different team altogether. Finland is represented by Marco Cantelli and Veo Vinica. Don't exactly know who he is, but I think he's definitely the same guy from last year. He's got a very, very unorthodox throw. Kind of looks like this when he's throwing. Don't know how the heck he can throw like that. As for Marco Cantelli, a very deliberate type of throw. But against Wales, they're just going to be fed to the Lions, or in this case, the Dragon. Gerwyn Price and Johnny Clayton are on the top of their game. Gerwyn Price just won the Hungarian Darts Trophy. As much as I don't like the guy, they're the #1 team in the PDC World Cup right now. They've definitely overtaken England. They've definitely overtaken the Netherlands or any other PDC top-ranked team going into the World Cup. So, yeah, definitely. I got to give Wales this one. Next up is going to be Hungary against Lithuania. Hungary is going to be represented by Janos Vekso and Patrick Kovacs. And they're going to be taking on Lithuania's Darius Labanauskas and Mindaugas Barasukas. You know, this is going to be a really tough one to call. Hungary has never really got out of the gate when it comes to the World Cup. They've mostly just been there just for fillers. And I hate to say that because Hungary, they are, you know, any country that's made it into the PDC World Cup, they deserve respect. But Hungary, I don't even think they've ever gotten out of the first round the whole time that this tournament's been on the go. As for Lithuania, Darius Lebanauskas, very, very experienced player, very, very dangerous player. His teammate, don't know anything about him. He might be the same guy from last year, but I'm not 100% sure. Going up against Hungary, I think Lithuania is going to take this, but I think it's going to be a very, very close game. I think Lithuania might win it by 1 or maybe 2 legs. But I think it's going to be a very, very close game, considering the fact that Hungary, they're due to get past the first round. Whether or not they will, I don't know. But they're going up against the Philippines, or excuse me, they're going up against Lithuania. Like I said, I think Lithuania is going to squeak this one. Here's the next one. You got Australia against Italy. Australia represented, of course, always by the Wizards, Simon Whitlock and Damon Hedda. And they're going up against Italy's Danilo Vigato and Michele Torretta. Once again, Italy's a sacrificial lamb. Australia's got a lot going on these days, especially after the untimely and very unfortunate passing of former Australian team member Kyle Anderson. Simon Whitlock and Damon Hedda have openly said that they're going to try and win this one for Kyle Anderson. And if they do win, Simon Whitlock's going to give all the proceeds of his part of the purse to the family. And it's very unfortunate that we lost somebody like Kyle Anderson, who was just a fantastic player and loved by everybody. Going up against Italy, you know what? Italy's never even made it out of the first round. They never even made it into the second round. I think the only time they ever got past the first round was when it was like way back in 2013, I think it was, when they were brought in as a replacement in the last minute. And, you know, they don't really impress me. Italy's never really impressed me. They've never been a dangerous team. They've never made it out of the first round. And going up against Australia, not to mention the fact that Australia is one of the top superpowers, formerly 2012 PDC World Cup finalists, but of course that was with Simon Whitlock and Paul Nicholson. But Damon Hedda, he's the new breed. He's a new young guy. He's a very dangerous player. Simon Whitlock, if he can keep going the way he's been going, he's got new darts. He's got all the experience in the world. I really don't see Italy even getting 1 leg on the board unless Simon and Damon have a really, really, really bad day, especially with all the pressure going on with their backs with the whole Kyle Anderson thing. But you know what? The proof is in the pudding. Italy, definitely Australia all the way. So, in other words, advance Australia fair. The United States is taking on Sweden in the next round. The United States is going to be represented by Dan Lauby Jr. and Chuck Pullio. Chuck Pullio, excuse me. Mamma mia. Chuck had to replace Danny Baggish at the last minute. I don't know exactly why. Danny, I guess he had personal problems, or maybe he got COVID. I don't know. But Danny Lauby and Chuck Pullio were part of the United States team in the last year, and they never made it past the first round. Normally, the United States' big superpower, her team, was always going to be Darren Young and Larry Butler. But obviously, Darren's fallen through the wayside. Larry, he ended up having a serious heart attack that he's only recently, the past couple of years, been managed to come back from. I mean, he's older now. He's in his 60s. So Dan Lauby Jr. is young. He's very young. As a matter of fact, I think he's only 28. And Chuck Pullio, he's a very experienced American player too. But I really don't see them take it. Well, I say that, but going up against Daniel Larsson and Johan Engström, Sweden last year, I thought for sure we're going to plow through Greece, because Greece was just such a poor team. They never made it. I think they only made it out of the first round like once in their entire time that they were in the PDC World Cup. And I really thought that Sweden was going to take them to the cleaners. That was a bad prediction on my part, considering the fact that Sweden not only lost to Greece, but they lost 5-0 when it came to losing to Greece. So this is going to be a pretty interesting team. Magnus Karras was always the team captain for Sweden, but like I said, even with Magnus Karras on the team, they didn't really do that much. So I think Danny Lauby, I'm not a big fan of his throwing style. His throwing style is like that of a basketball. He throws so fast, it's like this. Every single time he throws, like he's always trying to hit a 5-pointer, but this is darts, not basketball. Danny Lauby's throwing style is just too quick and just too uncontrollable. Chuck Puleo, I think being replaced at the last minute, I think he's not going to be ready for this. Daniel Larson, very experienced player, very stoic player. Don't know about Johan Engstrom, never heard of him before. But like I said, I think this is going to be a close game. But my prediction, I think the United States might just squeak this one by. If Sweden can get on the go, if they can get a couple of legs early, then it might be a totally different game for Sweden. But I think the United States might squeak this by, just for the fact that Dan Lauby Jr. and Chuck Puleo have played together before. Next up, you got the Netherlands against Denmark. You've got Michael van Gerwen with a new teammate this year, and that's Dirk van Dijvenbode, and they're taking on Denmark's, let's see, Andreas Topp Jorgensen and Niels Heinso. This is the first time that Per Larsen, who's always been in the PDC World Cup representing Denmark since 2010, is not going to be representing Team Denmark. I don't know what happened to him. Maybe he fell to the wayside, but at 55 years old, barely, not even making it past the World Cup team once. Actually, no, I think they made it out once and then eventually lost to Australia. But Denmark has never been a superpower in this game either, which is sad because after all the years that Per Larsen's put into it, you think you could just earn some rewards. But going up again, I don't know who these other two guys are. Niels Heinso, I think he's the same guy from last year, and he's got a very, deliberate yet very, very common throw. Going up against Michael van Gerwen and Dirk van Dijvenbode. Netherlands haven't won the World Cup since Michael van Gerwen and Raymond van Barneveld, the Dart Dream Team, has been together. Dirk van Dijvenbode, he's a very dangerous player, a very big player, and he's fairly fast, just like Michael van Gerwen, so I think they might get along really well. I think Michael van Gerwen's problem last year was when he was teamed up with Danny Noppert, who is a very slow, deliberate player, and Michael van Gerwen doesn't do good against slow players. But against Denmark, this one's gonna be out of the water. Netherlands gonna take this one, no problem. Next up, you've got Gibraltar against Singapore. Gibraltar's going to be represented by Sean Negretti and Justin Hewitt, and they're going to be taking on the Limbs. You got Paul Lim and Harris Lim, no relation. And Paul Lim is the oldest guy in the tournament. He's 67 years old, the Singapore slinger, a veteran in every aspect of the game, and they are probably the biggest, next to Spain, they're probably the biggest upsetters in this tournament, considering the fact that they managed to knock out Scotland, Peter Wright and Gary Anderson in their first round match, which was absolutely incredible. But this time they're going up against Gibraltar. Gibraltar, once again, they're a team that just never ever clicked, no matter how many times they tried, no matter how many different guys they had on the team, they never made it past the first round. They're just not a dominant team in the game, which is surprising. But, like I said, going up against somebody who is a veteran like the Limbs, Paul Lim and Harris Lim, every single time that Singapore has been in this World Cup, they've been a team and they've been a dominant team in their own rights. So going up against Gibraltar, I think even Italy, here's the thing that I would like to see. I wish to God that Italy and Gibraltar were actually drawn together so that way they could actually decide which team would actually make it to the second round for the first time, because one of them has to, and going up against any other team, they're just not going to get there. So I'm definitely going to give this one to Singapore, Paul Lim and Harris Lim. Harris is a really good player. Paul, once again, he's the first guy on live TV or in the BDO World Championships to hit a 9-dart finish and earn more money than Phil Taylor did from winning the entire tournament. And they are upset champions. So, yeah, definitely I'm going to give this one to Singapore. Next up, Scotland against China. The Chinese team are two guys that I've never heard of them before, never seen them, don't know who they are. China's only recently come out as PDC competitors. The PDC now have gotten over to China and actually started doing some stuff over there. They're going up against Scotland, which is going to be Peter Wright, and was supposed to be Gary Anderson. But once again, Gary Anderson pulled out of the World Cup. I don't know, maybe his nappies need to be changed or something like that. His diapers need to be changed or something, because he'll play all the major tournaments, but he won't represent Scotland for whatever reason, which is absolutely stupid. Because, you know, if I was Gary Anderson, I'd be itching at the bit to be representing my country more times than just once. But he's got to be replaced by Big John Henderson. Last year, Peter Wright and Gary Anderson ducked out of playing for Scotland because of COVID. Last year it was represented by John Henderson and Robert Thornton, the number 3 and number 4 for Scotland. Obviously, they didn't make that much of a dent. They managed to get to the quarterfinals, I think it was. They're just not the superpower team that Peter Wright and Gary Anderson is. But with Peter Wright on the team and John Henderson, John's still a very dangerous player, and he's still a very good player. So they might have a chance. They might even make it as far as the semifinals this year if they're lucky. So going up against China, once again, China has never made it past, actually no, China made it past the first round once. So, but going up against Scotland, you know, that Chinese dragon, he's going to be cut off by Claymore. Finally, the first round is going to be the Czech Republic against Poland. The Czech Republic is going to be represented by Karl Sedlec, or Sedlacek, I think. Evil Charlie, been there for every single time before. And his teammate is going to be Adam Wallace, who's going to be the youngest guy in the team, the youngest guy in the tournament, actually. He's only 19 years old. But the fact that a 19-year-old is representing this country is actually a pretty big deal. They're going up against Poland, Krzysztof Ratajski and Krzysztof Kachuk. Poland, they've shown themselves to be a pretty dominant team. They've been showing themselves a pretty good team. Last year, they made up a bit of an upset when they took on South Africa and beat them pretty bad. Ratajski is a very, very stoic player. And Kachuk, well, these guys have been around the game before and they know what they're doing. But going up against a team like the Czech Republic, it's going to be pretty interesting. I think the Czech Republic got a good player in Karl. Haven't really seen much of Adam. Don't know what he's all about. But I think this is going to be a tight game if the Czech Republic can actually get the ball rolling. I think Karl needs to hit the big shot, the big scores, and Adam needs to follow it up. I think Poland's going to take this one, not too tight, but I think Poland is going to take this one. But I think it's going to be a bit of a hard go for it. I think it's going to be a lot tighter than people will give it credit for. But in the end, I think this one is definitely going to go to Poland. So there's my predictions for the first round of the PDC World Cup. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you didn't, then go watch golf.